ASPX pop-up control makes it incredibly easy to display pop-up windows and hints on your web pages. Simply place the control onto a form, populate it with the desired HTML content, and choose where to display it. In this video, you'll learn how to create and customize a new pop-up control. I'll start with a new ASP.NET application. From the toolbox, I'll drag and drop a new pop-up control onto the page. Let's take a look at some of its properties. The Show Header property specifies whether the pop-up window's header should be displayed. Show Close button displays or hides the close button found on the header of the pop-up window. Finally, if the Show Footer property is enabled, it'll display a footer area at the bottom of the pop-up. Now let's populate the pop-up window with some content. I'll first set the header text, header navigate URL, and text properties. This created a link in the header and populated the content area of the pop-up window with the specified text. Next, let's add some text to the footer. To do this, I set the footer text and footer navigate URL properties of the control. For the purposes of this demo, I'll specify the width and height of the control manually. Now that I have a larger content area, I'd like to display an image in it. I click on the content area and from the toolbox, double-click on the ASPX image control to add it to the pop-up window. I set the image URL property to an image that I have copied to the website earlier. I'll then set the height and width of the image to 100%. The Close button of the pop-up window can also be further customized using the Close button image property. The footer can also contain an image, so let's add one. Now we need a way to display the pop-up menu at runtime. To do this, I switch to Source View. Underneath the pop-up control, I'll add a new span element. I'll specify an ID and add some text to be displayed. I switch back to Design View, and here you can see the text I just encapsulated in the span tag. My goal is to display the pop-up window when the mouse hovers over that line of text. I select the pop-up control and set its pop-up element ID property to the ID that I specified for the span element. Next, the pop-up action property specifies what action makes the pop-up window appear. For the purposes of this lesson, I'll select Mouse Over. I'll set the pop-up horizontal align and pop-up vertical align properties of the control so that the pop-up window is positioned on the right below the mouse cursor. The Close action property can be used to specify how the pop-up can be closed at runtime. While clicking the Close button always works, this setting also allows you to specify an additional action for closing the pop-up window. By default, it's on outer mouse click, so for now we'll keep this setting. The pop-up window can be displayed in a fixed position, or you can allow the user to move around and resize it. For this, I'll enable the Allow Dragging property. By setting the Drag Element property to Window, I can allow the user to move around the pop-up by clicking and dragging anywhere on the window. The Allow Resize property will enable window resizing at runtime. Furthermore, the resizing mode can also be changed, but for this demo, I'll leave it on the default setting of Live so that we can see the content of the pop-up window when resizing it. Now let's run the application to see this in action. I hover over the text, and you can see the window pop up in the specified position in relation to the mouse cursor. You can see the clickable links, and I can easily click and drag the window around. I can also resize the window. Pay attention how the content of the control is also automatically resized and stretched. If I resize the pop-up and close it, upon reopening it, the window will retain the same size and dimensions as when it was last used. Let's see how we can customize a few more settings. I close the web browser and return to Visual Studio. I select the pop-up control and enable the modal property. This will make the pop-up window modal, and no other control will be accessible until the window is closed. Next, I'll modify the pop-up horizontal align and pop-up vertical align properties to display the window at the center of the screen. Finally, I want the pop-up to be closed only using the Close button found on its header. I run the application again to see the final result. I hover over the text, and this time the pop-up is displayed in the center of the page. A gray overlay underneath it prevents other contents from being accessible while the window is being displayed. The pop-up can still move around. But to close it, the Close button needs to be clicked. Thanks for watching, and thank you for choosing DevExpress.